Hello everybody, this is Jeff Janess and welcome back to our series of lectures introducing you to GIS in general and ArcGIS in particular. And in the last video we looked at some of the things you can do in any decent GIS, and in this video I'm going to briefly introduce you to a few popular GIS software packages, and then we're going to dive more deeply into ArcGIS specifically. And just to be clear, there are good alternatives to ArcGIS, and they're often cheaper than ArcGIS or even free. And my job here really isn't to sell Esri products. I like ArcGIS. I specialize in using it. There's lots of alternative products out there. And like most people who use ArcGIS, I spend a lot of time angry at it, and you will too. And for most things, though, ArcGIS really is an excellent product. It can do far more things than any other GIS software I've seen, and with more types of data. And while it's sometimes hard to figure out how to do a particular function, there usually is a way. ArcGIS also has several excellent programming environments available that allow you to create your own custom tools, and it has an enthusiastic user community who sometimes even give away their own custom code for free. Now, looking into some of these alternatives, probably the most popular one out there is QGIS. It stands for Quantum GIS. Not only popular and powerful, but it is free, and it works on any major operating system, including Windows, Linux, Android, and Apple. Now, QGIS is really good at loading all kinds of data. It can load up Esri formats and Esri online web maps just fine. Has a great set of tools available and an enthusiastic user community that produces stuff and gives it away for free. Now, if there's a downside to QGIS, and my experience has been that it isn't always very well documented. Huge numbers of tools and add-ons produced by the user community. This is great, but and this is coming from someone who knows what he's talking about. I am a developer. I do create GIS tools, and I'll tell you, it's really a lot more fun writing the tool itself than it is to write clear and comprehensive documentation explaining how to use the tool and how the tool works. Often people slack off on that last step, and it kind of leaves the users struggling or unsure on whether they should trust the tool. But given that, though, QGIS is definitely worth the price, and it's worth taking a look at if you're interested. Now here's another free and open source one called GRASS. This was actually developed in the early 1980s by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It's open source now. It has developers all over the world, lots of people working on it, producing tools that work with it. It's free, definitely worth taking a look at if you're interested in it. Another popular GIS set of tools actually is included in the statistical software R. Now, R has taken over the analytical world. You see it everywhere. People are writing really fantastic analytical functions, do really high-level statistical analysis, and the same applies to the spatial statistics, so you can do some great things in R. Now, R is not really so much for making beautiful and cartographically interesting maps. It's really for analysis and doing high-end stats. So if that's your thing, R is really something you want to take a look at. Another alternative is this Manifold GIS. It's not free software, but it's a lot cheaper than ArcGIS. It's less than $200. And it works with a lot of types of data, works pretty fast, has a really very enthusiastic user community. They just love that software in my experience. I've never used Manifold myself. I can't really speak to it, but I have worked with people who use it, and they're really impressed with it. So take a look if you like. Here's the website. It's just www.manifold.net, and the price is pretty reasonable. So those are some good alternatives to ArcGIS when it comes to general GIS analysis. Now there are some specialized alternatives you should also be aware of. There's actually a whole branch of GIS that focuses specifically on imagery taken from satellites or from aircraft. Now, analyzing imagery can tell you a lot about vegetation health, ecosystem condition. It can tell you about change over time, especially if that imagery includes electromagnetic spectrum wavelengths outside the visible range, like infrared imagery. We're going to learn a little bit more about this in the lectures and labs on data types and raster analysis coming up. But in the meantime, there are alternative and I think better tools for remote sensing and imagery analysis than ArcGIS. ArcGIS does have some imagery analysis tools, but you usually read about the high-level imagery analysis and remote sensing. And I mean the stuff that analyzes hundreds or even thousands of different slices of the electromagnetic spectrum. These kind of things are usually done in software like Erdas Imagine or Clark Labs Idrisi or ENVI. Now, Esri is trying to catch up in this field. and they're coming along, but these other software packages are really the major players for that kind of analysis. Now, back to ArcGIS. ArcGIS is really the dominant player in the GIS software industry. There are lots of cheaper packages available, like we've seen, and lots of individual functions that actually work better or at least easier to use for specific tasks than ArcGIS. You can download little tools that just do a single thing and they do it really well. But ArcGIS usually does all of these things and more, even if it's harder to get to it. And ArcGIS is definitely the big dog in the room when it comes to GIS. Now, ArcGIS is not a single software program. That's kind of an important factor. It's a large product that includes a lot of different software. Now, ArcGIS Pro, and we sometimes call that ArcGIS Desktop these days, is the primary mapping and analysis tool that is installed on individual computers and workstations. We're going to be working with ArcGIS Pro in this class, but the general concept of ArcGIS actually covers a lot more. Now, ArcGIS Pro replaces a previous version of ArcGIS Desktop. The previous version was composed of these 4 components named ArcMap, ArcCatalog, ArcScene, and ArcGlobe, and this previous version is still in wide use, so you might see it around here and there. This product called ArcGIS Enterprise is used to connect with complex geodatabases and provides web services for online GIS mapping and analysis. ArcGIS Online and Portal are becoming more and more important components of ArcGIS. They let you keep your data and tools in the cloud. Lots of businesses and agencies use it to distribute maps and data to customers or to deliver mobile GIS functionality to their employees. They can use it on their phones or tablets. ArcGIS Online and Portal are basically the same, except that Esri hosts ArcGIS Online on Esri servers, and you or your employer host Portal on your own server. But given that difference, they basically do the same thing. ArcGIS apps, these things are growing like crazy. They provide additional GIS functions. Often you can use them on your phone or tablet. Some apps are free to download, but those free ones usually have to connect with some ArcGIS Online or Portal or ArcGIS Enterprise installation somewhere. There's other apps that are quite expensive standalone products that specialize in specific functions. There's one called Drone to Map, which generates 3D models and elevation datasets from drone imagery. Some called ArcGIS Runtime. It's pretty much ArcGIS Desktop, but without any user interface. It's for software developers. If you're a developer, you can license the internal functions of ArcGIS, and you can make your own software that calls on those libraries. It's a little cheaper to license than the full desktop license, but it requires a good software developer to make any use from it. ArcGIS provides a variety of web services, including functions to find the shortest route over a network, the quickest way to drive from one spot to another, or to generate spatial coordinates from street addresses. There's other web services that provide certain popular data sets like imagery and elevation data that might be too large to store locally. And Esri is constantly coming out with new tools, services, and apps. And this site here shows the most recent list, and if you go there, you'll keep seeing new products coming out pretty regularly. Now let's take a look at a couple of examples of ArcGIS Online stuff. This really is becoming a popular thing in the GIS world. So here's a cool example of how Normandy looked during World War II and today, and you can drag the center line back and forth to see imagery from the different dates. It's an interesting way to look at how the land has recovered after that invasion. And in forestry, we could do this with forest aerial imagery from different dates, and we can see the conditions before and after fires or before and after clear cuts, for example. Here's an example looking at bullfrog densities on the Williams Ranger District, and this is part of an Arizona Game and Fish project to identify places that are most affected by these invasive bullfrogs. They are an invasive species. And to try and determine which sites would be most likely to successfully eradicate them. So the analysis goes on before the ArcGIS Online data is presented, but the ArcGIS Online data is a way to show the project to the general community in a way that's easy to read and understand. Here's one of the most heartbreaking sites I've ever encountered. If you might recall the Camp Fire in Paradise, California back in 2018, a fire that destroyed the town and killed many of the citizens. This particular site was set up to help residents of the town find their property and determine whether their homes have been destroyed. And they had to evacuate the town, and CAL FIRE was in there doing cleanup and just checking property conditions. And CAL FIRE produced this site to help the property owners see their homes. And notice that almost all homes in this map are marked as destroyed. It was quite a fire. The site could also let users click on a site to see if a photograph had been taken of their home. Here's a more generally useful tool, ArcGIS Online Forest Service Map of Current Fires and Weather Conditions. This one's kind of nice because you can also open it right in ArcGIS Pro directly. Some ArcGIS Online services can be opened directly in ArcGIS Pro. Not all, but some. And this Forest Service map is an example of one that you can actually open on software on your computer. Okay, now let's take a closer look at ArcGIS Pro. This is the component of ArcGIS that we're going to be working with in this class. This is the desktop's GIS software. It comes in 3 license levels. We have the advanced license here at NAU, and if you go to work from, say, the Forest Service or most government agencies, you're going to have the advanced license available. But if you're going to go work for a private or nonprofit, you may only have the basic or the standard level. There's a pretty significant price difference at each level. Now, with the basic level, you can do almost anything you want. Most of the tools are available. It's quite a powerful package of software at the basic level. If you go up to the standard level, you get a lot of extra editing tools and a lot of tools that are designed specifically to work with high-end relational geodatabases. So if you're going to keep all your data in, say, an Oracle database or a SQL Server database, well, the standard level of ArcGIS gives you specialized tools to work with those databases. And then there's the advanced level. It just comes with a few extra high-end complex tools, a few more cartographic tools to make your maps look pretty. So, as I said, at NAU and in most universities and government agencies, we'll be working with the advanced level. Okay, now tools. Tools in ArcGIS are separated into toolboxes, and all toolboxes have a website that shows what tools are licensed at each of the 3 levels. For example, we can jump in here to the analysis tools, and we can see what tools are licensed at each level. All of the toolboxes have this kind of page, this website that shows what's licensed. And so here's the conversion toolbox. The conversion toolbox converts data from different formats. And then there's data management licenses. You can see what data management tools you have available at the different levels, basic, standard, and advanced. And then all tools have help files available, and you can go to those help files, and they'll tell you what license level that tool is available at. Now, next up, ArcGIS also comes with lots of extensions, and these are optional add-ons that you or your business might purchase. They're not automatically included when you license ArcGIS. Now, NAU and the Forest Service license most or all of these, but smaller businesses or nonprofits might not have them available. But let's look at a few of the most popular. First off, Spatial Analyst. This is good for raster-based topographic analysis, such as slopes, aspects, hillshade, and curvature. And we're going to learn more about what specifically raster data looks like in the topic on data types. But Spatial Analyst is also good for any kind of analysis that involves comparing or combining these raster data sets. Now, 3D Analyst, this is good for vector-based topographic analysis. And again, we'll get into vector versus raster in a future lecture. But it's good for finding things like view sheds, which means identify the entire portion of the landscape that can see some particular point. It's good for 3D simulations. In forestry, if we want to do something to the landscape that some people might consider ugly, like maybe we do a clear cut, 3D Analyst could help us determine the entire region that can see that clear cut. If you're an architect designing a building, and you could use 3D Analyst to see what other buildings might be in your shadow. If you're designing trails through a steep topography, you can use 3D Analyst to determine the slope along that trail. Geostatistical Analyst, this is often used for generating complex statistical predictive surfaces based on limited sample points. So you measured a few things across the landscape and you want to predict what the entire landscape looks like based on that small sample. Geostatistical Analyst comes with lots of tools to do this. Network Analyst helps you identify the shortest route between points, sort of like you get on Google Maps. But it'll do a lot more than that. It can help you calculate the optimal route for a vehicle visiting multiple locations, maybe like a UPS or a DHL truck making deliveries. An interesting thing about this, this is actually a famous problem in computer science. They call it the traveling salesman problem. Turns out that to find the most efficient route for a traveling salesman to hit a bunch of points, once you get even a small number of points, it becomes computationally impossible to solve it in any time shorter than the lifespan of the universe. So it's kind of a weird thing that Network Analyst can do it for you pretty quick. And the way that Network Analyst does it actually is that it doesn't guarantee the most efficient route, but rather a very efficient route. It kind of comes up with a good estimate of what that most efficient route would be. Network Analysis is also good for dividing the landscape up into areas based on proximity to some location. Say if you have a bunch of fire departments and you want to make sure that the fire departments are distributed the best way across the city to allow the most efficient access for a fire truck to every home. So a Network Analyst helps you distribute those fire stations. Then there's lots more extensions that may be produced by third-party developers. Now, to use an extension, sometimes you have to turn that extension on deliberately before you can actually use the tools. And to get there, you hit this Project tab in ArcGIS Pro, and then click down to Licensing. And here you'll see the list of extensions that are available to you. Now, if you want to turn on an extension, and that means that essentially we're turning this license to value from no to yes, then we click the Configure Your Licensing Options button, and we check off the extensions you want available to you. Now, how does licensing work in general in ArcGIS Pro? It really shouldn't be an issue to you to worry about in this particular class, but be aware of it if you use ArcGIS at a smaller organization. Larger organizations usually have a certain number of ArcGIS licenses available. And there's separate licenses for basic, standard, advanced, and for individual extensions. You can install the software on every machine in your building, but the machine will need to check that license out when the person starts the software. So, if an organization has only 10 licenses, then only 10 people can use ArcGIS Pro at a time, even if 100 people have it installed on their computers. Now, accessing an ArcGIS Pro license typically uses this named user system. Now, this means you're part of some organization that licenses ArcGIS, and you have somebody who's an administrator of your organization's ArcGIS Online account. Now, that administrator is able to declare you to be a particular type of named user who has permission to run ArcGIS Pro at one of the license levels. Now, there's actually several types of named user, and only a few of them come with permission to run ArcGIS Pro. So your administrator needs to make sure you're the right type of named user. And there's actually several types of named user that aren't able to run ArcGIS Pro. So then, if you're the right type of named user, and by the way, these are either creator or GIS professional types, well, in that case, ArcGIS Pro will check out a license from your organization's ArcGIS Online account, and it essentially unlocks itself for you when you log in. When you shut ArcGIS back down, the license is automatically returned to the organization online account. Now, this whole system depends on your computer being able to log into your ArcGIS Online account, so you'll need network access to do it. And this can actually be a problem when the network is down, or sometimes when you're just off working remotely. Now, in cases where you need to be disconnected from your online account, your administrator can allow you to check out a license for offline use. Then your computer just accesses that license locally right on the computer itself until it's time for you to return it, and you have to manually return the license to your ArcGIS Online account before it'll become available for anybody else in the organization to use. And then once you've got ArcGIS Pro licensed and running, you then need to be able to enable your extensions, and extensions may or may not require a license. Now, most Esri extensions do require licenses, and therefore you may have to specifically turn them on in the extension using the licensing window like we saw earlier. Doing this causes ArcGIS to check the license out, and if no licenses are available, ArcGIS just won't let you use any of the tools in that extension. Some third-party extensions require licenses, but many don't. And if an extension doesn't require a license, you're probably not going to see it in this extensions window anywhere. Now, ArcGIS Pro has another way to easily load third-party tools outside of the whole licensing system. That happens in this Add-in Manager function. If you're a developer and you create a tool that is recognized by this Add-in Manager, that makes it a lot easier for the users to install and use. And Esri really promotes the creation of add-in tools to developers. So if you are a developer, this is probably what you're going to wind up using. And finally, these three levels and the various extensions, they all apply to a lot more than ArcGIS Pro. Many ArcGIS components recognize these three levels and extensions so that, for example, your ArcGIS Enterprise license will also have additional tools and functionality if you license it at a different level or with different extensions. Okay, I think that's probably a good place to stop here. So far we've covered the interesting things you can do in GIS in general, and in this video we've discussed what ArcGIS is in particular. Now the next video we'll look at ArcGIS Pro specifically and just see what all the tools and buttons do and how the software is arranged, just basically how you can run it. All right, I look forward to seeing you there. You take care. Bye-bye.